Adventure design is complicated. There's no such thing as a perfect blueprint, no step-by-step manual to guarantee you'll write the next Winter's Daughter or Willoughby Hall. It's extremely daunting. When designing an adventure, we are working within a vast, creative sandbox with endless possibilities, but without any tools to guide you to the promised land, it's easy to get lost, to run underwater, get bit by a random cobra, and fall victim to the sun. That's why today, I'm going to help guide you and focus your ideas to create a cohesive, accessible tabletop RPG adventure. Hey friend, my name's Richie, and I'm a certified Sandbox Sherpa. I've had some pretty decent success competing in adventure design game jams, but I consistently notice glaring issues when reviewing other submissions, and a lot of these entries could easily become amazing adventures. With just a couple of tweaks and a bit of course correction in your approach to adventure design, we can polish up that turd and make something truly memorable. Adventure design is not a solved medium. There are infinite ways to write and present a module. Like the old Ogre adage, there is more than one way to skin a catoblepus. This also means there are a lot of incorrect ways to write and present a module, and since it would take forever to go over all those do's and don'ts of adventure design, it's a hell of a lot easier to change your overall approach and how you think about design. So grab hold of my grotesque massive hand and follow me to the land of tabletop RPG design. A game master is kind of like a chef cooking up an experience for their players, and running an adventure module is like following a recipe. Now, there are different types of chefs: professional chefs, celebrity chefs, home cooks, butchers, bakers, sushi roll makers, beginner chefs who lack confidence, and experienced ones who want to make something more complex. Chefs that cook with vibes, and chefs that need to measure every ingredient and panic if missing an easily substituted one. Looking at you, Mom. And each of those chefs could be a different persona. A persona is a user experience design term that is a representation of a typical user of your product. Think of it like creating a character sheet for your ideal user. Because when you're designing your adventure, you should not be designing it for yourself, but rather designing it for Gordon. Now you might ask, who the f is Gordon? Well, Gordon is an experienced game master approaching his 60s. He has run games all over the world and even charges for his services. He's kind of a dickhead. He doesn't really care for intricate story. He just wants to challenge his players. He likes difficult modules with lots of punishing traps. He loves a good random encounter table, especially when it's filled with tough monsters that drive fear into the hearts of the PCs. He's not afraid of a TPK. His eyesight is deteriorating, but he doesn't like to wear his glasses. So, why is this important when you can just skip this step and start designing? It's important to know who you are designing for. An adventure made for Gordon is going to look completely different compared to one made for Martha. And designing for a person will make solutions more obvious, because design is about problem solving. When you're stuck on a decision about what monster to use, or how to write your room descriptions, or what font you want to pick, you can always ask yourself, what would Gordon want? Maybe you have a complex mechanic that is super cool and thematic. You wrote it, you understand it, but would Gordon? Maybe you should include an example of how it works in play to provide more clarity. You may be thinking, well, I am the exact target audience for this product. Can't I just skip the persona and design a module for me? It's true, people design adventures that they themselves want to play, but the issue is you already have a bunch of preconceived notions that might guide you into poor design decisions. Let's say you're the type who needs to know every little detail before you feel comfortable running a scenario. How all the NPCs are interconnected, their backgrounds and histories, how every edge case and player action gets resolved. You end up writing paragraphs of lore and backstory because that's how you internalize content. Gordon, on the other hand, he's too busy running a restaurant empire and only has 15 minutes to prep for a Sunday evening game while everyone is digesting their beef Wellington. So you should probably change those paragraphs into bullet points to quickly convey information. Maybe your intended audience is similar to you, but give them a different name at least. Because when you're designing for someone else, it's easier to check your biases, to drop your assumptions. This shift in approach gives you clear direction and a laser-focused goal. Make design choices that directly please your target audience. You want your work to deeply resonate with your people. It's way better if your module scores a 9 out of 10 with your core audience and a 2 out of 10 with everyone else, rather than trying to please everyone and ending up with a generic, mediocre 5 out of 10. And by understanding our target users' pain points, we can figure out exactly how to make our module more accessible. Personally, after reading an adventure, I want to spend the absolute minimum amount of mental effort trying to figure out exactly how to run your game, because my attention span is cooked. I blame social media, short form content, and the constant need to doom scroll, but it's made me good at one thing: judging content in less than 0.84 seconds. If you've submitted your adventure to a game jam or design competition, it's going to be evaluated by a bunch of people. There needs to be as little friction as possible to get the reader to comprehend your ideas. The moment the reader is confused, their mind wanders, so you're going to need to hold their hand and guide them through this magical world you created. The easiest way to do that is have having a strong hook. Think of it like an elevator pitch. You need to be able to summarize your adventure in a sentence or two, and immediately communicate that to the reader. If it takes more than a couple sentences to explain the basic premise, your module is likely too complex. As soon as the reader understands the hook, it will provide much needed context. Think of the hook as an amuse-bouche, a little taste of your adventure that will awaken the palate, prepare the reader for the tasty meal sure to come. It sets a clear expectation and makes your module easier to digest. And make sure your hook isn't complicated either. A great hook utilizes existing tropes. It can help the reader get it much quicker. Even if the premise seems played out or stale, you can always plus it up with your own twist, or a subversion of expectations. Here's how I would pitch my existing adventures. In Questionable Morels, after consuming wild mushrooms, either accidentally or on purpose, the players get stuck in a hallucinogenic dream world and must collect motes of reality to escape. In Rumble at Romlot Ridge, a band of orcs kidnap an artificer and force their hostage to build a fog machine that blots out the sun. In Welcome Aboard Pontus Station, a genetic experiment goes wrong, unleashing a mutated horror upon the guests at an aquatic theme park space station. Make your hook as clear as possible. You don't want to add friction by confusing the reader. Explain the hook to your grandma. If she comprehends it, you're golden. And you want this hook to be the first thing the reader sees, because it gives so much context to what they're about to read. They need to see it early. I always try to include a section in my modules that I call the Game Master Primer. The point of this section is to answer 3 questions: what this module is, who this module is for, and how do you use this module. You can answer question 1, what this module is, with your hook. When answering who it's for, we usually communicate what game system does it use, how many players is it intended for, and what level should the characters be. You can also speak to the vibe and type of content that it is, like a gonzo-style dungeon crawl for 4 to 6 level 2 characters designed for shadowdark RPG. This type of information immediately tells the reader if they are the correct audience for your content. As a side note, a lot of this information may also be present on your cover, but I would always try to answer these questions within the first page of the adventure, provided you have the space to do so. The last question that you answer in the GM primer is how to use it. This guides the reader into your adventure. In this section, make sure to explain how the GM can incorporate this module into their own campaigns or an existing setting. Explain any procedures or additional rules the module uses, and inform the reader on how to start the module, like where the players begin and how to get the characters there. It can also be useful in the section to explain what the players need to do to complete the module, like if they need to slay a big bad, steal a valuable object, or save a princess. This entire section is going to provide much needed context to your adventure, and always make sure you have a space carved out for the GM primer within your module's scope. So you have big ideas for your adventure. Pages and pages of content. A town full of fully fleshed out NPCs, adventure locations, plural, maps, multiple even, villains, custom monsters with stat blocks, traps, treasures, magic items, random encounter tables, random mushroom tables, random tables. An adventure module contains a lot of stuff, and you want to make sure that you provide a lot of value to the game master, but you also need to design with some constraints. If you plan to produce the module just to distribute digitally, it can be as long or as short as it needs to be. However, I would recommend you self-impose some constraints because restrictions breed creativity. If designing for a competition like a game jam, there's often a page limit you need to abide by. If you want it physically printed, you should probably check with the printer to make sure they can accommodate your page count. And once you know what kind of page limit you're working with, you can do a rough outline. Say you have like 16 pages to work with. There are elements of your module that are absolutely required, like a front and back cover. Reserve a page for the Game Master Primer. In my opinion, this is a non-negotiable and crucial for the success of an adventure module. Maybe we'll even have a big old map, a 2-pager, random encounter table with a couple of monster stat blocks will take up a page, and we can dedicate another page to NPCs. This leaves 9 pages left for room descriptions. Let's say one room will be dedicated to the grand finale. It's probably going to include a stat block of the big bad, so they will get their own page. As for the remaining 8 pages, we can likely write 2 descriptions per page, so our map should include roughly 17-ish keyed locations to explore. If we can establish a rough draft, we can make sure that we aren't going to get overwhelmed with too much content, and we can better design each individual piece of the puzzle. Now, your structure could be completely different. Maybe there is no map. Maybe every location has a map. Maybe there are pages dedicated to new classes or character options, or a big section dedicated to a new procedural game mechanic. But whatever you do, outline it first. You don't want to spend extra time writing content that will have to be cut, or redrawing the map because you overestimated how many rooms you needed. Tabletop role-playing games are like a weird game of telephone, a true test of communication. The game master reads a module, internalizes that information, and communicates it to the players. That leaves a lot of opportunity for the information to get mixed up and lost. Ultimately, it's not that big of a deal if that happens. The game only exists between the interaction of the game master and the players. But as the adventure designer, we want to provide the game master with all the tools, answers, and confidence they need to generate a memorable experience for them and their players. And we can offer this with effective writing. Opinions will differ on what that actually means, but I believe it's best to write an adventure like a technical document. That means use as few words as possible to communicate your ideas. Keep your writing terse and effective. I like to maximize gameable content, so I always have a tab open with a thesaurus. With my choice of words, I try to be evocative, to convey more feeling and emotion in fewer words, and try to just write situations and not outcomes. I mean, maybe if there's some obvious consequence that will happen after a fail state, you can include an outcome, but generally, the game will move in unexpected directions, so filling up pages with if-then statements will most likely result in wasted space. There is, and always will be, a great debate between read-aloud text versus bullet points for location descriptions. I honestly like using both. I find when I run games, a sentence or two of read-aloud text will fire up my improv engine. Anything more than a couple sentences, though, becomes more difficult for the game master to deliver effectively, and it will start to bore the players. Just keep at it, though. Eventually, you will find a style that works well for you. Again, there is no perfect answer, but if you want to see how I write my adventures, you can download some of them for free on my itch page. So, lastly, here are some Game Jam specific tips on how to increase the rank of your adventure. Pay attention how you will be evaluated. Make sure you tick all the boxes. If one of the categories is how well you implemented the jam's theme, write a paragraph in your entry about how you interpreted the theme and applied it to your adventure. Lead with your best ideas. If you have a cool location or villain or a piece of writing that you're really proud of, try to show it off right away. Not everyone will take the time and absorb every detail, so if you put your cool shit early, it will more likely get noticed. Try not to use AI art. People are going to rate you lower because they're ethically against it. There are a lot of stock image sites and other resources if you're not an artist. It's great just to include your own doodles. They're probably not as bad as you think they are. I try to have a nuanced take as this generative AI stuff is getting harder and harder to avoid. I feel it levels the playing field for solo devs who want to make content but don't have an artistic skill set. But I wouldn't feel comfortable charging someone for something that's AI generated. So all the content that I charge for uses stock art or crappy doodles I spent way too much time making. But since this video is free, you can come back now, Mr. Ogre. And if you have any adventure design tips, let me know in the comments. And if you want to grow as an adventure designer, like and subscribe so you get notified for more videos like this. Oh, and one more thing. I've seen people get down on themselves because they weren't happy with their final result, or their adventure didn't rank as high as they thought. They blame the fact that they aren't an artist. But to be honest with you, I'm not an artist either. I'm a problem solver. The reality is, to design an accessible adventure, you need to reach a certain threshold of graphic design skills. But reaching this baseline is not as hard as you think. It's well within the reach of everyone, because graphic design isn't about artistic skill, it's about solving problems. Focus on usability, make your text readable, and give it space to breathe. Utilize bolding to make important information easier to find. Look to existing adventures as inspiration. Be a problem solver, and keep it simple. Less is often more. But if you do want more, check out this video next.